Anderson Cooper 360. CNN weeknights at 8 and 10 Eastern.
Now tonight, keeping them honest, what newly uncovered memos say about the botched ATF operation we've been reporting on called Fast and Furious. The operation that let firearms bought in America get across the border into Mexico. The idea was to trace them to drug cartel leaders, but instead of tracing them, the ATF lost track of them. They never even informed the Mexican government about the weapons, and to add insult to injury, yet no one ever told the Mexican government about the entire thing. The whole thing was predicated on being able to follow these things, but no one told the Mexicans. So the U.S. is basically arming murderous Mexican drug cartels, and no one tells Mexico. We're not talking about a dozen or even a couple hundred guns. We are talking about thousands of weapons. Two of those weapons turned up at the murder scene of a U.S. border agent named Brian Terry. That is his photo. It's important we remember his name. Tonight, the GOP-controlled House Judiciary Committee asked the White House to name a special counsel to determine whether the Attorney General himself, Eric Holder, lied when asked about Fast and Furious. Here's what he said back in May.
When did you first know about the program, officially, I believe, called Fast and Furious? To the best of your knowledge, what date?
I'm not sure the exact date, but I probably heard about Fast and Furious for the first time over the last few weeks.
However, keeping them honest, we've obtained memos that show otherwise. Weekly reports from Holder deputies to the Attorney General. Weekly reports. One, dated the week of October 18th, 2010, talks about 8 pending indictments then under seal in connection with gun running to Mexico. Quote, the sealing will likely last until another investigation, Operation Fast and Furious, is ready for takedown. So assuming Attorney General Holder read the memo, assuming that in fact he was at least aware of the operation months before he testified he was. Now another memo from the first week, that July, also mentions Fast and Furious and gives a brief thumbnail description of it. Now presumably the Attorney General read that one as well. Both, we should say, are heavily redacted, so we don't know what else they say about Fast and Furious, if in fact they say anything more at all. Late tonight, a Justice Department official told us that all we know for sure is that the memos suggest Eric Holder had reason to at least be aware of the operation months before he said he did, before the Oversight Committee last May. Now, an official of the Justice Department, though, says the Attorney General was simply repeating the answer he gave a Senate committee in March about whether he was aware of questionable tactics. This official says, and I quote, Chairman Issa, of all people, should be familiar with the difference between knowing about an investigation and being aware of questionable tactics employed in that investigation. But recall, in the clip that was played, Congressman Issa's question wasn't that complicated. He simply asked when Attorney General Holder became aware of the operation, not when did he learn the details of it. So is our source at the Justice Department splitting hairs, or is Congressman Issa? You can decide for yourself. We spoke to the congressman earlier tonight. So, Congressman, the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee has formally asked the president to appoint a special counsel to investigate what Attorney General Holder knew and when he knew it. The request is based on an exchange you had back with him in May. Do you believe the Attorney General lied to you?
Well, I certainly believe that he either misrepresented the facts or he's sufficiently incompetent that he didn't know what was in his weekly briefings. And I certainly support the fact that the Attorney General cannot investigate himself.
So, CNN has obtained some of the documents that you and your colleagues have referenced, and the Attorney General did receive some memos last year acknowledging the existence of Operation Fast and Furious, but only in passing. The Justice Department is saying basically, look, he receives dozens of reports every week, some more than 100 pages. There's no indication he knew of the problems with this particular operation that far back. Do you believe that?
Well, it's difficult, if at all possible, to believe it. Additionally, there's a spin going that when they talked about guns walking in excess, that this were other programs. We've had testimony in front of our committee that says justice never lets guns walk. And now we have written proof that they were concerned about the guns walking. They were concerned about the optics of press interviews in which they were going to talk about problems, including Brian Terry's murder. And very clearly, this was not hundreds of pages of reports. This was the key weekly briefing that the Attorney General received, on which there was a paragraph on Fast and Furious repeatedly. So to say, when asked specifically about Fast and Furious, he didn't understand the question, he certainly had to know that every week he was seeing briefings on Fast and Furious. He had to at least say, I'm familiar with the name. What is it you mean? Or that I don't fully understand everything as well as I did 2 weeks before. Instead, in fairness, both to myself and to Jason Chaffetz, The Attorney General implied that he had never heard of this until 2 weeks before, rather than that perhaps he didn't know what a felony stupid program this was that led to the death of Brian Terry and the release of at least 2,000 weapons into the worst of the worst people's hands.
I want to read to you what a Justice Department official has told CNN, because they're pushing back on what you're saying. They said Chairman Issa, of all people, should be familiar with the difference between knowing about an investigation and being aware of questionable tactics employed in that investigation, since documents provided to his committee show that he was given a briefing, meaning you were given a briefing, that included the Fast and Furious operation in 2010, a year before the controversy emerged. So, I mean, did you yourself know about the operation last year?
That is an outright lie that the Justice Department has been spinning. They shopped that to the newspapers until they found one that would print it. The fact is, Kenneth Melson, a man who under oath, very, very well recorded, has said he didn't know about much of this and clearly did not brief me in one briefing that was about gun trafficking into Mexico. And let's understand something, Anderson. They would have you believe that I knew what the Attorney General didn't know, that I knew what they were deliberately withholding from ATF, DEA, and justice agents in Mexico City and from the U.S. ambassador to Mexico. So as this cover-up and this game of spin and delay continues, the problem is it's only creating problems that didn't initially exist. Initially, this was a dumb program that led to very adverse consequences. Now it's about a cover-up, about deception, about slow-rolling discovery of this and other committees. Understand, I got involved in this because Senator Grassley was denied any discovery because he wasn't the chairman over in the Senate, and I got involved somewhat on his behalf, and my committee has taken a lead on it. But this was about stonewalling of the Senate long before I got involved.
I'd always thought this was the first time this kind of a program had been tried. There are new revelations tonight coming out that the Bush administration had a similar weapons program, something called Operation Wide Receiver. Do you know about that? Do you think officials from that administration should be looked at as well?
Well, Anderson, we'd know a lot more about it, except that's among the documents we're still waiting to get. What we do know about Wide Receiver somewhat is very small amount of weapons, much more intensive following. But in fact, we will get to the bottom of whether or not this practice in a smaller way may have begun on the Bush watch. We're not putting it past any administration and giving anyone a pass. The American people and the people of Mexico expect us to have a zero tolerance for letting drugs come into our country or weapons go into Mexico.
Congressman Issa, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Anderson.